She was there one moment, gone the next.
3 years later, and there are still many questions around the disappearance of Mekayla Bali.
6 years since Paula Bali last saw her daughter, Mekayla.
Today, another plea to bring Mekayla Bali home.
Mekayla Margaret Kim Nightingale Bali was born on July 2nd, 1999 in Regina, Saskatchewan. And before anyone runs to the comments, yes, that is how it's correctly pronounced, although everything in me wishes that it weren't. However, she grew up in Yorkton, about 2 hours northeast. From birth, she was raised by single mother Paula Bali, who worked for the government's Ministry of Social Services. Luckily, Paula wasn't alone in raising Mekayla and her 2 younger siblings, as the matriarchal household included the kids' aunt and grandmother. Mekayla cared very deeply for her family, especially for her dog Angel, and she'd even considered becoming a veterinarian when she grew up. Family described her as quiet and shy, preferring to read, play video games, cook, or take nature photography, rather than go on typical angsty teen adventures. Particularly, she enjoyed the Hunger Games series and playing League of Legends with her friends. However, she did also enjoy being a part of the drama club at school, and used it as an outlet to step out of her shell. This, as well as changing up her natural red hair color once in a while, was her preferred method of self-expression. Mekayla also loved playing the violin and had an overall knack for music. One year for her mother's birthday, she even went and bought an accordion and learned how to play Happy Birthday as a surprise, which really touched Paula's heart since it had required so much effort and forethought. Mekayla kept a small group of friends and wasn't known to really get into any type of trouble. Close pals described her as very caring and almost like a mother figure to the group, making sure that everyone was included and taken care of. One of her best friends even recalls the first week of freshman year when she was sitting alone at a table at lunch, and Mekayla was the first to introduce herself and integrate the girl into her existing group of friends. Though her docility allowed her to get along with pretty much anyone, she was still going through a tough time. Being that she was a junior in high school and teenagers aren't exactly known to be the friendliest, Mekayla became the target of bullying, particularly due to her struggle with acne. At the time, she was taking the prescription medication isotretinoin, also known as Accutane, in order to mitigate her blemishes. And one of the many side effects of this medication can include adverse changes in mood and behavior. This may have been a contributing factor in the teen self-harming to cope with the painful rejection from some of her peers. Feeling alone, like many people do, Mekayla turned to the internet. She was active on all the popular social media apps, including the messenger app Kik. As somebody who used Kik as a teenager many moons ago, let me just tell you, nothing good is happening on there, alright? There are unmoderated groups and private messaging, both of which can be breeding grounds for nefarious activity, including adults talking to minors. Not saying for sure that that happened in this case, but just setting the scene for those who are unacquainted with Kik. One of Mekayla's best friends recalls at least 4 online friends that Mekayla talked to, some in Canada and at least 1 in the US. And although her friend tried to dissuade her from conversing with sketchy guys, Mekayla assured her that there was nothing to worry about because she herself used aliases a lot of the time. On Monday, April 11th, 2016, Mekayla and 2 of her best friends hopped in their car and went off campus to eat lunch at a local fast food restaurant. Once they ordered their food and sat down in the booth, Mekayla began telling her friends that she was going to visit a bunch of places around the province soon, including Regina, Prince Albert, Moose Jaw, and Saskatoon. Her friends were initially like, yeah, right, with what money? And she assured them that she had $5,000 saved up in her bank account. Still, her friends thought this was nothing more than a teenage dream, as they'd all aspired to move away from the suburbs to a big city with more things for young people to enjoy. Later on, friends recounted Mekayla mentioning a boy named Josh that she was communicating with online, and another man named Christopher, who was supposedly coming to Saskatchewan to meet her for the first time. When Mekayla returned to class that afternoon, her teacher noted that she seemed upset, although that's pretty typical when you're teaching a group of teenagers. After school let out, Mekayla texted her friend Oksana asking for a ride to TD Bank the following morning before school, though the friend didn't answer because she left her phone at home that day. That evening, Mekayla made 3 calls to TD Bank customer service within 30 minutes to both check her balance and to wire $25 into her checking account. That night, she texted several other friends, including an ex-boyfriend, saying that she was upset and needed help, although she didn't specify what it was that she needed help with. Again, she reiterated wanting to go to Regina for a few days just to get away from it all. April 12th, that morning, Mekayla texted her friend Oksana once again, asking for a ride to the bank at 6:41 a.m., to which the friend refused because the bank didn't even open until 9 a.m. anyways. Mekayla's mother described that morning as regular, the same as any other. She and Mekayla woke up around the same time, did their hair and makeup in the bathroom together as they usually did, listening to music and chit-chatting a little bit. After breakfast, Mekayla's grandmother drove her to Sacred Heart High School and dropped her off between 8:10 and 8:20 a.m. Just 11 minutes later, Mekayla was seen on camera placing some binders into her locker before leaving out a back door just 6 minutes later. From there, she was seen on camera walking southeast along railroad tracks in town. When Mekayla wasn't in first period that morning, her ex-boyfriend texted asking where she was at, but by then she was already across town, approaching the closed TD Bank at 8:51 a.m. While she waited for the doors to open, she was seen on CCTV making a call to somebody on her phone, although the call did not register through her provider, meaning that this call was almost certainly made through an app, making it untraceable. As soon as the bank teller opened the doors at 8:55, Mekayla withdrew $55 from her checking account. She then walked east along Broadway Street at 9 a.m., entering Terry's Pawn and Bargain and attempting to pawn a silver ring. The clerk behind the counter didn't see any real value in the ring since the material is widely available, so he denied the exchange. The employee remarked that Mekayla didn't seem upset or in distress whatsoever when she didn't receive an offer, and she simply left quietly. At 9:10 a.m., Mekayla entered a Tim Hortons coffee shop and purchased a hot coffee before plopping her full backpack down and taking a seat at one of the booths. This was a notable detail, since she was known for carrying a purse for school rather than the backpack she was toting around this day. She remained at the Tim Hortons for about 15 minutes, alone and occasionally watching the exit/entrance doors. She seems to pass the time by taking her phone apart and putting it back together. Then she walked outside, immediately walked back in, but left through another exit. Was there something that she was trying to avoid, or was she just wanting a shortcut to head towards another direction? For the next half hour, she was seen on surveillance walking a wide circle around the restaurant. She then re-entered and sat at another table where she appeared to send a number of text messages and made phone calls, which once again were untraceable. At 10:12, she texted a friend asking for unspecified help, but took it back just a few minutes later, saying that never mind, she figured it out. Once more, she left the restaurant and re-entered immediately, this time approaching an older woman who claims that Mekayla had asked for help getting a hotel room, to which the woman declined. If a young person ever approaches you asking to get a hotel room, it's probably for not any good reason, and you should probably, ask more questions, maybe report it to somebody, because that's just not... There's a reason children aren't able to rent hotel rooms by themselves. After the rejection, Mekayla hopped back on her phone and left Tim Hortons one final time, walking down Broadway Street East before disappearing from the camera's view. Shortly after exiting the camera's view, she went to the STC bus depot between 11 and 11:45 a.m., and asked the employee when she could catch the next bus to Regina. When she learned that it wouldn't be until around 5 p.m. that evening, she left without purchasing a ticket. She then texted a friend, "I'll see you at lunch." 1 minute till noon, Mekayla returned to Sacred Heart High School, where she met up with 2 of her friends in the cafeteria and once again reiterated her plans to vacation to Regina. 4 minutes later, she left the school and headed back towards the bus depot that happened to have a restaurant attached called the Trail Stop. After ordering and enjoying some good old-fashioned poutine, fellow patrons saw Mekayla Bali exit the trail stop between 1 and 1:45, never seen on local surveillance again. When Mekayla's grandmother went to pick her up from school that afternoon and take her to violin lessons, the administration informed her that Mekayla actually hadn't been in class at all that day. I don't know about you guys, but at my high school, the second you weren't in first period, your parents were getting called. I used to think it was a way just to deter the skippers, but now as I've gotten older and more into true crime, I think it's actually pretty smart. If your kid leaves for the bus one morning or you've dropped them off and all day you're at work assuming that you know their whereabouts, and then 8 hours later the school tells you, oh yeah, by the way, they weren't here all day. You probably want to know that information about 8 hours ago, so you can do something about it sooner rather than later. Obviously worried, her grandmother went to Paula's work, and Paula immediately knew that something was wrong. At first, she thought it was just some sort of misunderstanding. I mean, surely she'd gone to a friend's house and her phone had died or something, right? At worst, she just uncharacteristically ran away and would be back again soon. Again, Mekayla wasn't the adventurous type. But that quickly turned to panic as Paula realized that none of the money from their family's emergency fund had been taken, nor was her daily acne medication, meaning that she probably wasn't planning on being gone that long. She began repeatedly calling and texting Mekayla with no response, and the grandmother and mother went out on their own, looking around local parks and hangout spots for their loved one. At one point, they even returned to the school, screaming out Mekayla's name. But after hours and hours of looking with no luck, the defeated pair went to the Yorkton police that evening and reported Mekayla missing. Authorities were quick to ask the public for help in her discovery, describing her as 5'2", blue eyes, bleach blonde hair, acne, a dime-sized birthmark on her chin, chickenpox scars on her forehead, scars on her thighs, and protruding front teeth. I feel like that description's kind of a read, honestly, like, dang, you couldn't pointed out my beautifully arched nose or my earrings, or I just feel like I'd be a little offended if those were the things that were used to describe me. But anywho, she was last seen wearing glasses, a mint scarf, jeans, and a burgundy long sleeve. As her friends heard the news that Mekayla was not on vacation to Regina, but instead missing, they tried contacting her over and over again to no avail. The morning after her disappearance, Mekayla's phone was turned off at 6:51 a.m., and her social media accounts have been inactive ever since. Money has not entered nor exited her bank account since that day, and her passport was left at home. As they started to dig into the case, police found that she did not, in fact, have $5,000 in her bank account as she had claimed to her friends. They were able to access her phone records, though again, they were pretty much empty since she mainly used social media apps for texting and calling, and it's pretty difficult, if not impossible, to obtain records from these companies, especially being that a lot of them are American, while the police were in Canada. Without this vital information, they were basically missing all of the context of that day, apart from the footage and eyewitness accounts. They tried reaching out to potential online friends of hers, as well as visited local hotels to ask if Mekayla was seen checking in with anyone, to no avail. One very interesting detail collected from the patrons at the trail stop was that Mekayla had left the restaurant with a man. He was described as having dark hair, a stocky, muscular build, and a tattoo of a cross on fire on his forearm. He was initially named a person of interest, but after contacting the police promptly and undergoing questioning, nothing came of it. After 3 weeks and no leads, the local police turned the case over to the General Investigations section. After 3 months, a child search alert was issued across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Around the same time, an old Snapchat message sent to Mekayla by a friend switched from delivered to opened, though nobody can know for sure if it was a glitch or if this was the real deal. In August of that same year, a 3-day search of the wooded area near Sacred Heart High was conducted, though no evidence was found. Desperate to find the youngest member of their strong family of women, the Bali family set up fundraising events in order to build up a $25,000 reward for any information leading to her safe return, and an anonymous donor matched that amount for a total of $50,000. 2 years later, though, the donor asked for their money back. And I get that life happens and maybe something came up, but imagine being the guy who has to ask a grieving family for his money back to help find their child. Rough conversation to have, I'm sure. Not to worry though. Thanks to additional fundraising and another generous donor, the reward is now up to $100,000. Money aside, Mekayla's mother Paula has diligently worked to keep her daughter's name in the media, to spread awareness to the public by doing press conferences, social media campaigns, and engaging with the community. On each anniversary of her disappearance, the Bali family holds a candlelit vigil for her in Yorkton, where attendees are encouraged to wear blue, Mekayla's favorite color. I'll link some podcast episodes that Paula has appeared on down below if you're interested in hearing her heartbreaking perspective. Over the years, police and Mekayla's family have received hundreds of tips of people claiming to see Mekayla in both Vancouver and Penticton, British Columbia, though both sightings were confirmed not to be her. Mekayla's disappearance has sparked a number of theories as to what could have possibly happened to her. One prominent theory is that she simply ran away, supported by the fact that she'd told her friends several times that she just wanted to leave town. Her actions shown in the CCTV footage that day suggest that she was willingly absent from school and intended to get both a hotel room and a bus ticket. Social media posts made by Mekayla make it clear that she was unhappy with the way things were in her life, though her mom has insisted that those posts were old and no longer applied. To further support the idea that Mekayla hadn't intended to run away long term, she didn't pack her Accutane or any significant amount of money. Another significant theory is that Mekayla met an ill fate at the hands of an online predator and/or human trafficker. Like many teens her age, she had an active online presence using both her real and false identities. Many social media apps, particularly Kik, have been used by predators to groom young women, since it has little to no parental controls and allows strangers to connect without a mutual agreement, like adding each other as friends or contacts. She could have been talking to really anyone, and the fact that she was trying to rent out a hotel room could suggest that she was intending to meet someone. To make matters even more concerning, Mekayla's hometown of Yorkton is near major human trafficking hubs such as Regina, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Edmonton. And that's not even to mention the guys named Josh and Christopher that Mekayla mentioned to her friends in passing. Who were these people? Innocent online buddies or predators luring a young girl into a dangerous situation? Although I personally tend to lean towards the theory that she unfortunately met with someone who did not have her best interest in mind, it's been very difficult for authorities to come to any conclusion at all. Mekayla's tendency to communicate via apps and not her cell phone provider has led police to either have to rely on family and friends to provide copies of conversations, or straight up just take their best guess as to who she was communicating with, and that clearly has not worked out well so far. Another difficult obstacle for investigators is the number of tips that have come in claiming to have seen Mekayla all over the world. With over 800 tips flowing in, each takes a significant amount of resources to follow up on, a lot of which the authorities don't even have. And even more, many of these tips are simply speculation, without any solid evidence to determine whether this was a crime, accident, runaway. We may never know what happened to Mekayla Bali. Her Aunt Rhonda has said, quote, "They say time heals all wounds, but it doesn't heal a missing person's wounds. Your heart is still shattered. You learn to put a face on when you're not bawling with everybody, but you're so shattered inside that when you get up in the morning, your first thought is, you just don't want to get up. You don't want to move. There's nothing to live for anymore. Your ray of sunshine is gone, and you just have to pretend that you can go on. You have to force yourself to live, what you might call living. It's not living. It's suffer. Paula has highlighted how little resources there are for families of missing people, and the grief often leads them to health issues, suicide, or addiction. She's mentioned how difficult the disappearance has been on the family, and how they slept on the living room floor together when it initially happened for months. Ever since, they've been unable to eat dinner at the table, knowing that they're missing a significant piece of their puzzle. Mekayla's younger sister still writes notes to her and makes her Christmas presents, leaving them in her room for when she returns. Her Aunt Rhonda also writes letters to Mekayla every single day, saying that when she comes back, she'll know that she was missed and loved the entire time. Well, that just about brings us to the end of today's video, and hopefully I've been effective in sharing Mekayla's story and getting her name out there. Of course, true crime stories always have absolutely horrific aspects. That is, after all, what makes them true crime. But there's something especially chilling to me about missing persons and how that must affect their family on a daily basis, not knowing what happened to their loved one. Underneath the frustration of not having answers lies a glimmer of hope that their person may one day return home, and despite how much time has passed, I really hope and pray that that is the case here. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the case of Alicia Navarro, the 14-year-old runaway from Arizona who was found quote-unquote safe after a 3-year search by the FBI, albeit with a very suspicious man in Montana who we can pretty much assume was the predator that persuaded her to run away in the first place. While it's not the ideal outcome, her family must have had so much weight lifted off of their shoulders knowing that she was alive. I hope that the Bali family is able to experience a similar type of relief in their lifetime, preferably without the creepy old man. Please, for the love of God, without the creepy old man. That being said, I'm going to leave some resources down below in the description if you have any information that could lead to her discovery. And while you're down there, I'm interested to read what you think about this case in the comments. I want to thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! You want to be in the video so bad. This is Kitty. She doesn't like being held. She's scratching me. I love that for her. I still love you, Kitty. Mwah.